The endless void of space stretched before Tom's eyes as he guided his freighter through the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The aging ship, Star Runner, wasn't much to look at, but it kept him employed and fed. At 32, he had spent nearly a decade doing these supply runs, and while the pay was decent, the loneliness of space sometimes got to him. The ship's computer chirped, breaking the monotony. Unusual energy signature detected, 200 kilometers starboard. Tom frowned, checking his instruments. This route wasn't typically busy with traffic, and the reading wasn't matching any known human vessels. His first instinct was to ignore it. That's what most seasoned pilots would do. But something about the erratic pattern of the energy signature caught his attention. "Computer, adjust course. Let's take a closer look," he commanded, his hands steady on the controls as the Star Runner turned towards the mysterious reading. As they drew closer, his radar picked up a ship, or what remained of one. It was clearly alien in design, all smooth curves and gleaming metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The vessel was about half the size of his freighter, and it was obvious something had gone terribly wrong. The hull was breached in several places, and waves of energy pulsed from what he assumed was their engine core. "Those readings aren't good," Tom muttered to himself. The core was becoming unstable. If it blew, anything within 1,000 kilometers would be turned to space dust. Making a quick decision, Tom suited up in his emergency gear. The ship's computer protested, reciting regulations about unauthorized contact with alien vessels, but he ignored it. Someone could be alive in there, and he wasn't about to let them die because of bureaucratic rules. Maneuvering the Star Runner close enough to establish a magnetic lock, Tom crossed over to the alien ship through his emergency tube. The artificial gravity was failing, and pieces of broken equipment floated everywhere. The air was thin but breathable according to his suit's readings. That's when he saw her. In what appeared to be the ship's main chamber, a stasis pod flickered with failing power. Inside was a humanoid figure, female, by the look of it. Her skin had a silvery sheen to it, and what looked like delicate patterns traced across her face. She wore elaborate clothing that practically screamed important person. The stasis pod's control panel was flashing red. Tom didn't need to understand the alien language to know that meant bad news. The ship shuddered around him as another energy wave pulsed through it. "Okay, let's get you out of there," he said, though she couldn't hear him. It took him precious minutes to figure out the release mechanism, all while the ship's deterioration accelerated around them. When the pod finally opened, she slumped forward into his arms, unconscious but alive. Her skin was cool to the touch, and he could see her chest rising and falling slowly. The ship lurched violently. "Warning," his suit computer announced. "Critical energy surge detected. Explosion imminent." Tom didn't waste time. He gathered the alien woman in his arms and pushed off toward his ship, using his suit's thrusters to guide them through the tube. They made it back to the Star Runner's airlock just as the alien vessel's core went critical. The explosion rocked his ship, but the shields held. As they cleared the blast radius, the alien woman stirred in the medical bay where he placed her. Her eyes opened, revealing irises that shifted color like oil on water. She spoke in a language he couldn't understand, but her actions were clear enough. With shaking hands, she removed a crystal pendant from her neck and pressed it into his palm. The material felt warm, almost alive. Before Tom could react, his sensors detected multiple ships dropping out of what appeared to be some form of faster-than-light travel. They were massive, clearly military, and of the same design as the ship he'd just left behind. The alien woman smiled at him, touched his cheek gently, and then lost consciousness again. Within minutes, the arriving ships had made contact, and a medical team had taken her away, leaving Tom with nothing but the crystal pendant and a story no one would believe. He didn't even know her name. 10 years could change a lot of things, but it hadn't changed Tom's habit of keeping the crystal pendant with him at all times. Now, at 42, He ran one of Earth's most successful private shipping companies, but he still piloted ships himself whenever he could. The pendant hung from a simple chain around his neck, its warmth a constant reminder that he hadn't imagined that strange day a decade ago. "Sir, you might want to see this," his flight officer, Mike, called from the bridge of their newest ship, the Galaxy Stride. They were returning from a routine run to the Mars colonies when the ship's advanced sensors, far better than what he'd had on his old freighter, picked up something unusual. Tom walked over, absently touching the pendant through his shirt. "What have we got?" "Energy readings like I've never seen before. They're appearing all around Earth's defense perimeter." Mike pointed to the holographic display where dozens of red dots were flashing. "Military's already scrambling." The pendant against Tom's chest suddenly grew hot. He pulled it out, startled to see it glowing with an inner light for the first time since that rescue. As he stared at it, the ship's communication system crackled to life with emergency broadcasts. "Attention all vessels. Multiple unknown objects emerging from hyperspace. This is not a drill. All civilian ships return to nearest port immediately." The view through the bridge windows changed dramatically as massive ships began appearing out of nowhere. They came in waves, each vessel elegant and powerful, their hulls showing the same light-absorbing properties as the small ship he'd encountered years ago. The lead ship alone was the size of a small city. "My God," Mike whispered. "Are we under attack?" Tom shook his head slowly, his eyes fixed on the fleet. "No, I don't think so." The pendant was pulsing now, matching the rhythm of lights that had begun to appear on the alien ships. Earth's defense forces were on high alert, with ships and orbital platforms training weapons on the newcomers. The tension in space was thick enough to cut with a knife. A transmission cut through all channels, broadcasting in perfect English. "We come in peace, people of Earth. We are the Stellar Dominion. We seek one among you. Thomas Walker, captain of the vessel that once saved our queen." Mike turned to stare at his boss. "Tom, what aren't you telling us?" Before Tom could answer, his pendant projected a hologram into the bridge. A familiar face appeared, the same one he'd seen 10 years ago, though now more mature, more regal. Her silvery skin seemed to shimmer even in the holographic projection. "Hello, Tom," the alien woman said softly. "I hope you kept my gift safe. We have much to discuss." The Earth's military channels erupted with chatter. The Stellar Dominion was legendary even in human space, a civilization so advanced that most thought they were just stories. They controlled thousands of star systems, and their technology was centuries beyond humanity's reach. And somehow Tom had saved their queen a decade ago. "All these ships," Tom said, gesturing at the fleet, "just to find me." The hologram smiled. "You have no idea how important you are, Tom. May we send a shuttle for you? There are things you need to know, things that will change everything." Tom looked at the pendant, then at the massive fleet, and finally at his stunned crew. A decade of questions might finally get answers. "I'll meet with you," he said, "but my ship stays with me." "Of course," the Queen replied. "Bring your crew as well. They should witness what's about to happen." As they followed the coordinates provided by the Dominion fleet, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change dramatically. Again, the pendant's warmth seemed to pulse with possibility, and the massive fleet parted to make way for his comparatively tiny vessel. Whatever was coming, at least this time he was walking into it with his eyes open. Mostly. The docking procedure in the Dominion's flagship was smoother than anything Tom had ever experienced. His ship, the Galaxy Stride, was guided into a massive hangar that could have held a small fleet of Earth vessels. The space around them hummed with energy, and lights danced across surfaces that seemed to shift and move on their own. "I've never seen anything like this," Mike whispered as they prepared to disembark. The rest of the crew nodded in silent agreement. A delegation waited for them at the bottom of their ship's ramp. The aliens were tall, elegant beings with that distinctive silver skin, but none drew the eye like their queen. She stood in front, wearing flowing robes that seemed woven from starlight itself. The simple pendant Tom wore suddenly felt very heavy around his neck. "Welcome aboard the Celestial Crown," she said, her voice carrying the same musical quality he remembered from 10 years ago. "I am Queen Lisa of the Stellar Dominion, though when we first met, I was simply Princess Lisa, running from those who wished me harm." Tom bowed awkwardly, unsure of the proper protocol. "Your Majesty, I'm just glad I could help back then." She laughed, the sound like crystal chimes. "Still so modest. Please, walk with me. Your crew will be well cared for." She gestured to several attendants who stepped forward to guide Tom's people to what appeared to be a luxurious waiting area. As they walked through the ship's corridors, Tom couldn't help but notice how others reacted to their queen. It wasn't just respect he saw in their eyes. It was something closer to awe. She moved with grace that seemed almost supernatural, yet there was something familiar in the way she kept glancing at him. "You've been watching Earth," Tom said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," she admitted. "Through that pendant, among other means. We needed to know when your people were ready." They entered what appeared to be a private garden within the ship, complete with plants that glowed with their own inner light. A small stream trickled somewhere nearby, and the air smelled of flowers Tom had never seen before. "Ready for what?" he asked. Lisa turned to face him fully. "Ready to learn the truth about your place in the galaxy, about why I really gave you that pendant, about why, of all the billions of humans on Earth, you were the one who found me that day." The pendant grew warm against his chest again. Lisa reached out and touched it gently, causing patterns of light to spread across its surface. "This isn't just a piece of jewelry, is it?" Tom asked. "No," she smiled. "It's a key. A key that's been reading your genetic code for the past decade, confirming what we hoped to be true." Before Tom could ask what she meant, a holographic display appeared between them, showing what looked like complex DNA structures. "Your DNA, Tom, is special, more special than you could imagine. And we've waited 10 years, watching your species develop, hoping you would be ready when we needed to return." "Why wait?" Tom asked. "If it was so important, why not just come back immediately?" Lisa's expression grew serious. "Because forcing advancement on a species before they're ready is dangerous. We needed humanity to reach certain technological and social milestones on their own. We needed to be sure you could handle what we're about to tell you." She waved her hand, and the hologram changed to show what looked like ancient star charts. "My people have a secret, Tom. A secret that involves Earth, involves humanity, and most specifically, involves you. Are you ready to hear it?" Tom looked at the pendant, then at the impossible garden around them, and finally at the queen he'd saved so long ago. Whatever was coming would change everything, not just for him, but for all of humanity. "I'm ready," he said. Lisa smiled, but there was something both ancient and sad in her eyes. "Then let me tell you about your true heritage, and why that simple act of kindness 10 years ago might just save 2 civilizations." The holographic display between Tom and Queen Lisa shifted, showing complex strands of DNA twisting in the air. The strands glowed with an inner light that matched the pendant's pulse against Tom's chest. "Our civilization is dying," Lisa said quietly. Her silver skin seemed to dim slightly as she spoke. "A genetic disorder is spreading through our population, one that our best scientists couldn't solve." Tom watched as the hologram showed cells breaking down, entire genetic structures collapsing. "How long?" he asked. "Without intervention, my people have less than 50 years before we become sterile. Within 200 years, we would be extinct." She waved her hand, and the display changed again. "But then I found you." The pendant lifted slightly from Tom's chest, floating in the air between them. Its crystal structure caught the light from the bioluminescent plants around them, creating rainbow patterns on the walls. "When you saved me that day, I was actually on a secret mission. We had detected unusual genetic signatures from Earth, but couldn't investigate openly without causing panic among your people. Lisa's eyes met his. The pendant I gave you wasn't just a gift. It was our most advanced genetic scanner. The hologram now showed Tom's DNA structure alongside the Dominion species. There were striking similarities, but also crucial differences. Your DNA contains something we lost long ago, Lisa continued. A genetic sequence that repairs itself, adapts, evolves. It's not just you. All humans have this ability to some degree. But you, she gestured, and the display zoomed in on specific sections of his genetic code. You have it in its purest form. Tom stared at the floating strands of DNA. So you need my genes to save your people. It's more complicated than that, Lisa said. She paced the garden path, her robes shimming like liquid starlight. The sequence in your DNA isn't just similar to ours. It's perfect. Too perfect to be random. As if it was. Designed, Tom finished, understanding dawning on his face. Yes. Lisa stopped pacing and faced him. Someone, long ago, engineered human DNA to carry this repair sequence. They hid it in your species, letting it evolve naturally, protecting it until it was needed. The pendant pulsed again, and Tom felt a strange resonance through his entire body. That's why you waited 10 years, to see if the sequence would stay stable. Partly, Lisa nodded. We also needed to be sure humanity could handle this knowledge. Your technological advancement in the past decade has been remarkable. Your social development even more so. She stepped closer, her expression intense. But there's a price, Tom. Extracting and activating this sequence isn't simple. It would require you to undergo a procedure, one that's never been attempted before. Is it dangerous? Tom asked, though he already knew the answer. Very. The process would require integrating your genetic code with our technology. No human has ever experienced anything like it. She paused, her voice softening. I didn't want to ask this of you, especially not after you saved my life. But billions of lives hang in the balance. Tom looked around the impossible garden, at the technology so far beyond human understanding, at the queen who had carried this burden for so long. If I don't do it, we'll find another way, Lisa said firmly. I won't force this on you. That's not why we waited, why we watched. We wanted you to choose freely, understanding everything at stake. The pendant floated back down to rest against Tom's chest, warm and familiar. He touched it gently, remembering that day 10 years ago, when he'd chosen to investigate a distress signal instead of flying past. How long do I have to decide? He asked. The procedure must be done within the next month, if it's to be done at all. Lisa stepped back, giving him space. Take time to think. Consult with your people. This decision affects more than just you. Tom nodded slowly, his mind already racing with the implications. A genetic key, hidden in human DNA, waiting to be found. The fate of an entire civilization possibly resting on his choice. And somehow, he suspected this wasn't even the biggest revelation yet to come. The past week had been the longest of Tom's life. Back on Earth, he sat in a high-security conference room with military leaders, scientists, and government officials from around the world. The pendant still hung around his neck, now the subject of intense interest from everyone who knew its true purpose. We can't trust them, General Roberts said, his face red with frustration. This could be an elaborate trap. For all we know, that procedure could kill you and give them something to use against Earth. Dr. Anna, Earth's leading geneticist, shook her head. The DNA scans they provided are real. The genetic repair sequence in Tom's cells is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's far too complex for us to have detected it before their scanners showed us where to look. Tom watched the arguments bounce back and forth. The stellar dominion had been transparent, allowing Earth scientists to visit their ships and verify their claims. The genetic disorder threatening their species was real. The question was whether the cure was worth the risk. His ship's crew had stayed loyal, with Mike organizing support among the space pilot community. Whatever you decide, boss, we're behind you, he had said earlier that day. The pendant grew warm, and Tom pulled it out, drawing everyone's attention. Now that they knew what it was, the room fell silent whenever it showed activity. A hologram appeared, showing Queen Lisa's form. "I apologize for the interruption," she said, her image floating above the conference table. "But there's something else you need to know before making your decision, Tom." General Roberts started to object, but a look from Tom silenced him. "The procedure," Lisa continued, "it's not just about saving my people. The genetic sequence, it works both ways. If successful, it would create a permanent biological link between our species, a bridge of sorts." The room erupted in shocked whispers. Dr. Anna leaned forward, her eyes wide. "A symbiotic relationship between entire species." "Yes," Lisa nodded. "Our civilizations would be forever connected. We would share not just genetic stability, but certain traits, abilities. It could advance human development by centuries. Or it could go horribly wrong," Tom finished. "Exactly. The risk isn't just to you, Tom. It's to both our peoples." Lisa's hologram looked tired, the weight of responsibility clear in her expression. The room fell silent again. Tom stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the city below. The Dominion ships were visible in the sky, their massive forms creating artificial constellations. "How long until the procedure becomes impossible?" he asked. 3 weeks, Lisa replied. "After that, the genetic degradation in our population will be too advanced for the sequence to reverse." Tom touched the pendant again, feeling its warmth. He thought about that day 10 years ago, about the choice he'd made to investigate a distress signal. One decision, changing the course of 2 civilizations. "I'll do it," he said quietly. The room exploded in protests and questions, but Tom held up his hand. "On one condition." Lisa's hologram tilted her head, waiting. "I want Dr. Anna and her team present for the procedure, and I want all the data shared with Earth's scientists, regardless of the outcome. If this is going to be a bridge between our species, let's start building it now." A smile spread across Lisa's face. "Agreed. Though I should warn you, the next revelation, about why this connection is possible at all, might be the hardest to accept." "What do you mean?" General Roberts demanded. "I think," Tom said slowly, the pendant growing warmer in his hand, "she's about to tell us why humans have this sequence in the first place, aren't you?" Lisa's hologram nodded. "Yes, the truth about humanity's origins, and why your DNA holds the key to our survival. Are you ready for that story?" Tom looked around the room, at the faces of Earth's leaders, then back at the image of the alien queen he'd saved a decade ago. Whatever came next would change everything they thought they knew about human history. "Tell us," he said. Queen Lisa's hologram expanded, filling the conference room with images of ancient star maps and genetic sequences. The pendant in Tom's hand pulsed with a steady rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. 100,000 years ago, Lisa began, my civilization reached its peak. We had mastered genetic engineering, space travel, and even time itself. But we saw something coming. A genetic plague that would take millennia to develop, but would be unstoppable once it began. The hologram showed a beautiful world, much like Earth, but with purple oceans and silver forests. This was our homeworld. Our scientists discovered that our genetic manipulation of our own species had created a fatal flaw, one that would take thousands of generations to manifest. Tom watched as the images changed, showing spacecraft leaving that distant world. "You couldn't fix it." "No," Lisa said softly. "The flaw was too deeply embedded in our genetic code. But we could plan for it. Our ancestors did something unprecedented. They seeded a new world with engineered life, a world that would develop naturally, but carry within it the cure we would eventually need." The hologram shifted to show a familiar blue planet. "Earth," Dr. Anna whispered. "Yes." Lisa nodded. "Your world was chosen carefully. Perfect conditions for life to evolve naturally, but with specific genetic markers planted in the earliest organisms, markers that would eventually lead to humanity. The room was dead silent as the implications sank in. General Roberts slumped in his chair, his earlier hostility replaced by shock. "You created us?" Tom asked. "Not exactly," Lisa corrected. "We created the potential for you, the basic building blocks. But how humanity developed, your cultures, your achievements, your choices, those are all purely your own. We couldn't predict what you would become. We could only hope you would carry the genetic key we needed." The hologram now showed human DNA strands alongside the Dominion's genetic structure. "The repair sequence in your DNA isn't just a cure. It's a bridge back to what our species was meant to be. Pure, uncorrupted by our own manipulation." "But why me?" Tom asked. "Why was I the one who found you that day?" Lisa's expression softened. "The pendant doesn't just scan DNA. It resonates with it. When our scientists detected the pure sequence on Earth, I came to investigate. The ship's damage wasn't entirely accidental. We needed to find the right person, someone who would choose to help without being asked. The pendant led me to you." Dr. Anna stood up, her scientific curiosity overcoming her shock. "The procedure you're proposing, it's not just about saving your species, is it? It's about fulfilling a plan set in motion 100,000 years ago." "Yes," Lisa acknowledged. "If it works, it will create a permanent bond between our peoples. Humanity will gain access to abilities and knowledge you've only dreamed of. My people will be saved from extinction. Together, we could become something entirely new." Tom looked down at the pendant, understanding at last why it had always felt warm to his touch. "That's why you waited 10 years. You needed humanity to advance enough to handle this truth. And to prove you could be trusted with it," Lisa added. "Your response to first contact, your willingness to verify our claims scientifically rather than react with fear, these proved our ancestors chose wisely." The room erupted in discussion, but Tom remained quiet, processing everything. His DNA carried the hopes of an ancient civilization, a key to the future of two species. The choice he'd made 10 years ago hadn't been random at all. It had been the culmination of the longest-running plan in human history. "When do we begin?" he asked finally. Lisa's hologram smiled. "The procedure must be performed on our homeworld. Are you ready to see where it all began?" Tom looked around the room at Earth's leaders, then back at the pendant that had started it all. "Yes," he said. "It's time to complete the circle." The pendant glowed brighter, as if acknowledging the weight of the moment. Two species, separated by time and space, were about to be reunited. And Tom Walker, a simple cargo pilot who'd once helped a stranger in need, would be the bridge between them. The Dominion homeworld's purple ocean stretched endlessly below as Tom stood at the window of the medical facility. In 2 hours, he would undergo the procedure that would change everything. Dr. Anna and her team had spent the past week reviewing the process, amazed by the advanced genetic technology they were witnessing. "Nervous?" Mike asked, standing beside his captain and friend. "Surprisingly, no," Tom replied, touching the pendant that had guided him here. "It feels right, somehow, like everything has been leading to this moment." The medical chamber was a marvel of engineering. Crystal structures pulsed with bioorganic energy, and screens displayed genetic information in real time. Queen Lisa entered, wearing simple white robes instead of her royal attire. "The procedure will take 6 hours," she explained as Tom lay down on the medical bed. "Your DNA will be used to create a genetic bridge, linking our species at the most fundamental level. Are you ready?" Tom nodded. The pendant lifted from his chest, floating to a crystal interface above him. Dr. Anna watched her instruments carefully as the process began. Energy flowed through the room in visible waves. Tom felt warmth spread through his body as the genetic modification began. His consciousness expanded, touching memories that weren't his own, the history of two species flowing through his mind. Hours passed like minutes. The genetic bridge formed, spreading from Tom through the Dominion's biological network, correcting the ancient flaw. At the same time, Humanity's genetic potential began to unlock, awakening abilities that had laid dormant for millennia. When Tom opened his eyes, the world looked different. He could see energy patterns, feel the connection between all living things. Queen Lisa stood nearby, tears streaming down her face. "It worked," she whispered. "The genetic degradation is reversing throughout our population. And your people." Dr. Anna was staring at her screens in amazement. "The changes are spreading through human DNA across Earth. It's like we're waking up." Tom sat up, feeling stronger than ever. The pendant had transformed into a crystal key, its purpose finally fulfilled. "What happens now?" he asked. Lisa smiled. "Now we build the future together. Your people's creativity and determination, combined with our technology and knowledge. We'll explore the galaxy as equals, as we were always meant to be." Over the next few months, both civilizations underwent remarkable changes. Humans developed new abilities, enhanced healing, telepathic communication, and a deeper connection to the universe itself. The Dominion regained their genetic stability and found renewed purpose in guiding their younger siblings. Tom became the official ambassador between the two species, his unique position as the bridge maker giving him insight into both civilizations. The pendant-turned key became a symbol of unity, displayed in both Earth's and the Dominion's halls of leadership. 1 year after the procedure, Tom stood on the observation deck of a new ship, one built through the combined efforts of human and Dominion engineers. Queen Lisa joined him, their genetic connection allowing them to share thoughts without words. "Did your ancestors know it would turn out like this?" Tom asked, watching Earth and the Dominion homeworld displayed side by side on the viewing screen. "They hoped," Lisa replied. "They couldn't know for sure. But they believed that by creating humanity, by giving you the freedom to develop on your own, you would become something extraordinary." They were right. The ship's crew was a mix of both species, working together seamlessly. Below them, Earth was entering a new golden age, while the Dominion had found new purpose in their role as humanity's partners rather than saviors. "To think," Tom said, looking at the key that had once been his pendant, "all of this started because of one distress signal 10 years ago." Lisa smiled. "No, it started 100,000 years ago, with hope for the future. You just helped complete the circle." Together, they watched as their ship, named Unity, prepared for its first mission of joint exploration. Two civilizations, once separated by time and space, now moved forward as one. And it had all begun with a simple act of kindness, a human stopping to help someone in need. The genetic bridge had done more than save two species. It had shown them all what they could become when they worked together. The future stretched before them, full of endless possibilities, ready to be explored by humanity and the Dominion, side by side, just as it was always meant to be.